concepts in their cosmology, and so it's very easy. It goes like this. Ore poyahu vereko nandeyara ore poyahu vereko nandeyara ore poyahu vereko nandeyara ore poyahu vereko So what I want to do today is first of all to ask forgiveness, because I am not a specialist in any of the things I'm going to talk about. My hope is that I am trying to see, this is what colonization does to us, that my grandmother might have been from the Guarani, but because it was not good to be related to the indigenous or to the black people, it is erased. So I'm searching for that which I don't know where it is, but I know it's in me. So in some ways it's my way of honoring my own people without even being able to claim beyond my own self that I belong there. So what I'm going to do is to talk about the myth, and not the myth as something that is not true, of the Guarani, which is the land without evil. And as I do that, I'm going to do a performance. So don't be scared or anything. Come along with me, and then we can come talk about it later on. I have asked permission to do that, and I hope it's okay with you. If not, we can talk about that later. And meanwhile, what you're going to see, it is a mass that was done in the Catholic Church in São Paulo, when the Catholic Church is also asking for forgiveness for what the Church has done during this 500 years of colonization in Latin America. And you will see something seen of this mass in 1977 in a church in São Paulo, but also with scenes from the Guarani people in Paraguay. That is all mixed up. You won't hear much of the sound, but at least some of the some of the images. And since walking is fundamental for the Guarani, I'll be walking around as well. So I don't start from thinking, and I don't start from metaphysics, any ontology. Too much of a luxury to start in thinking. But I start my thinking in a concrete reality, and for that matter, everything that we might call theology must start where it hurts. And to think about the possibility of a God it is to start there with those who are hurting, and that's what I want to start. Those who have survived 500 years of a very clear intention of ethnic cleansing. When we talk about native nations, we are not trying to find recognition of any kind. Recognition, as Glenn Coulthard has showed us, well, it is an entrapment of the academy and of the government and the white settler in general. Because then we put us all into trying to recognize ourselves to somebody who doesn't need to have our recognition. Instead of recognition, we are treading on sovereign discourses. And for those discourses to happen, we need a broad-based idea that can fundamentally change social and political relations as well as relationships with the natural world. As Andrea Smith and Audra Simpson state, Native studies need to be based not on intellectual isolationism, but on intellectual promiscuity, sympathy, and solidarity. So here we are, promiscuous academics and people trying to reach out in sympathy and solidarity with the sovereignty of native nations. Today we are going to consider then one nation, the Guarani people, and the concept of land without evil. So the Guarani nations are made up of diverse groups that are spread throughout Latin America due to different patterns of immigration. This nation is marked by its ongoing movement, so there is no way to determine their origin nor the roots of their migration. Their main sense of life is made based on Nandereko. That means our way of being, our costumes, our systems and conditions, our laws and habits. Due to the spreading out of different groups, each group developing its own systems and conditions, they have their own art and rituals, religion and dances. Each one develops their own specificities according to their movements and local interactions. Nonetheless, it is possible to talk about a generic Guarani culture that is based on migration, agriculture, life lived in communities, grounded in extensive families and organized around the assemblies called Ati that recognize their leaders. It is the notion of walking that establishes their ways of living. They walk both concretely and spiritually. Wata means to walk, to go into a path, travel or stroll. Walking and dancing are fundamental parts of the religious lives, and by walking and dancing and talking, they celebrate the memory of their past, their present, and their future. The long singing called Mobarahe Puku, for instance, is a march through the 13 or more skies so they can enter into the house of the father-grandfather at the end. The Guarani religion is complex with gods and ghosts and ways of dealing with energies. Their religion is based on a word that comes from above, a word that becomes sacrament through dance and singing and is organized by prophecies. And most of their prophecies are called for people to go search for the land without evil. The land without evil comes from the words Ivi Maranei, as well as Ka'a Maranei, both present in the first dictionary that ever existed in 1639. It has a deep ecological and realistic meaning. It is about an intact soil, a mountain or a jungle that are not worked yet, a place where the wood hasn't been taken away yet. To that matter, Catholicism connected Virgin Mary with that notion of Ka'a Maranei. In order to get to that land, an explored land, there must be a call from the leader and a dance is established. And then they dance for a certain time. Some reports say that some tribes dance for a whole year until directions are received, and then they go all walking to the land without evil. Dance was fundamental because if one controlled the fatigue caused by this prolonged dance, they could move automatically without effort, because the body will lose weight and they can move effortlessly. Thus, to dance was to prepare oneself to the necessary walking ahead. Moreover, to dance was to place the dancers in communication with other spiritual real beings. So the Guarani search for the land without evil was always a prophetic call called tirelessly and done tirelessly. When they could actually dance and have festivities, this was a sign that the land without evil was already somewhat there, that the place was the center of the world. For the Guarani, there's a seamless connection between the land without evil and the perfection of the person. One path leading to the other. The same way that the land without evil is real in this earth, thus personal perfection is also possible. So the path to the land without evil was a path from the known to the unknown. The land without evil is a place where the land would give this jabuticaba juice and sweet cornbread. A land with abundant food and possibility for more festivities, where the land would produce without much effort and people would not die, which didn't mean only immortality. This whole real cosmological concept was a way of being in a world, a whole cosmology that oriented their lives, and all they needed to move about the earth, to protect themselves, to search for themselves, to search for their ancestors, and a home where their gods, parents, and grandparents lived. The land without evil was another form of society, a new society, a place where we could all deeply connect with nature, a land where we share everything, a land without profit, without envy, and with no rush. This cosmological notion became a paradigm to think reality in general, nature, the outer and inner worlds, and a project, a utopia of a society that is more replenishable and lived in solidarity. In order to get to paradise, they need to walk, to make an effort to get to that utopic place where there wouldn't be alienation or oppression. The land without evil is understood as a new earth, a place for festivities, for reciprocity, for mutual love, things that they were already living. A place that produces perfect people, people who do not want to die. In Gausaldaliga's terms, the land without evil is the land of freedom for all people. However, this sense of mutuality, of interdependence, of a safe place, of a place without evil, comes from a deep, deep sense that they have experienced a lot of evil in this land. That the fullness of their festivity is impossible, that for perfection somewhat is unattainable. In Guarani's tradition, they tell several stories of destruction, catastrophes, and cataclysms, so they know that these disasters are always possible. Their experiences with prolonged droughts, exhaustion of the land, plagues and attacks from animals and their own enemies, sun eclipses, floods, and so on, are seen as evil, threats to deform their ways of being Guarani. But also, other forms of evil can also endanger this community. Their violence, homicide, faults against the moral order, lack of collaboration and mutual love, and then there is no reconciliation between people. Nowadays, the forms of evil that have grown exponentially, besides those evil that I just mentioned, there is also 500 years of massacre, of killing. They were once 2 million people, and now they are 46,000. The evils of abuse, a clear ethnic cleansing. Moreover, there are evils that are coming with decolonization now, with the new liberal economy that might be larger potentials of destructions. The ongoing stealing of the land, the sustainability or ability, or the non-sustainability of their own land, and the impossibility to participate in a larger economy. The fences of farmers that continue to cut and reduce their needed path to live and walk freely. The white settlers, the big agribusiness, the destruction of the biodiversity, the pesticides, the turning food into fuel, land grabbers, productive soil turning into grass for cows, and the big industry of meat. Government abandonment, and now the political strategies that make new laws through government to fulfill the desires of capitalism and take away the land that they fought so much to have. Where are now the mountains and the forests where they could walk to? The white society has already destroyed almost entirely the possibility of walking, searching for perfection, looking for the land without evil. It is harder now to search for the land without evil when they live in a land with endless evil. The Mumba in Megan, the evil thing, covers everything, everywhere. Displaced, stolen, thrown into minuscule pieces of land, they still expect to find the land without evil. However, without the land, they will have no word or dance or walk. Nonetheless, they still pronounce the word. They still receive the word from above. They still dance. And they still walk. They still dramatize the possibility to recuperate the land without evil. And they are still fighting. This people of resistance has been struggling since 1756 when one of their warriors, Saint Cepé, led the people to impressive games against the Spaniards and the Portuguese people. And they were very close to win until those countries came and mercilessly killed Saint Cepé and 1,500 people. But they continue to prophesy that there is a land without evil. They continue to dance. They continue to walk. They continue to prepare the memories of the future for them and for all of us. So now briefly, I think I hope that is a little clearer what the land without evil is. And so I'm just getting some notions of process theology to see in what ways we can connect. There is the sense of the primordial nature in process theology, in Whitehead. And it is a sense of the repositum of all possible value, but only as possible. In this repositum, there lies the entire multiplicity of eternal objects, which are all the qualities, characteristics, and properties that could characterize an event or set of events. The sense of the repositum is where the Guarani's God lived with the potentiality of its many multiplicities. Their God, however, has both primordial and since they have consciousness and have conceptual and physical feelings. The Guarani's God also and serves actual value. Perhaps the cosmologies of the Guaranis can help us move from temporality to spatiality, to the real concreteness of things. So then, the Guarani cosmology might be all that we need. No Whitehead, no mechanistic understanding of the world. Just the cosmology of the Guaranis will be enough for us. The second notion I want to use is the creative transformation. The Guaranis live under this creative transformation as well against that which destructively transformed their lands and put their lives in danger. They have used the creative transformation to transform their environment and their lives since their appearance. They use this creative transformation through their rituals, cosmology, dancing, and walking. But also through their words too. As Bartolomeo Meliá said, the history of a Guarani is a history of their words. The words representing everything in the lives of the Guarani. And it is through the words, not in the book, but through the words, that they establish a communitarian education that is at the service of all. See, Monica Coleman has combined womanist theology and process theology in her book, Making a Way Out of No Way. In it, she argues that making a way out of no way and creative transformation from both black communities and process theology are complementary insights from the respective theological traditions. So in the same way, the theologies of the Guarani people hold a sign of strength to keep themselves alive. They have kept the promise of a land without evil for all of us during all their existence. So the Guaranis are the ones now holding on to this repositum. They are the ones that carry for us the very source of that which keeps them and ourselves, all of us, alive. From the process theology, we also get the notion of the power of persuasion and a call. There is no sense of a superpower God for the Guaranis. But there is a power of doing the values that will be coming back to us. The power of persuasion can be found in the endless dancing and walking and calling forth for a land without evil for us. The cosmology is a power of persuasion that calls people into this mode of being and creation, which is the same way that we can understand God and cosmology from process theology. In that movement, we can also bring to us a discussion of the sense of call. What is the sense of call has to do with us? Because the Guaranis are always also calling us to walk, to dance, to keep on moving towards that land. They issue a call to us that comes from the future and come from the past for us to create the conditions of the possibilities of the existence of our lives together. So, if we are to create this common society, what we can call also a cosmopolitanism, this cosmopolitanism is a cosmopolitanism must be of a dialogue, critique and dialogue, according to Walter Mignolo and Eduardo Mendieta. Because the cosmopolitanism that we have to create has to encompass the marginalized, the foreigner, the poor, the indigenous, and it goes against the kind of globalization that we have now that creates a certain form of cosmopolitanism that does not open criticism and does not dialogue with anyone, but only accept the ones outside as they recognize so they can keep us inside and to say, we are done our work. Look, we have the poor people here. This is the politics of identity that you have everywhere. Once you have one minority, you can put in your reports and say, here we are, so diverse. We must go beyond that. What David Griffin calls a new cosmopolitanism on a base of resistance against the homogenization that is currently being at work by a globalization led by corporations. Because not everybody matters in this globalization, right? The cosmopolitanism happens in the fractures of the systems through difference and diversity. Catherine Keller, who is here with us, says that this cosmopolitanism needs a cosmology. But instead of, and here's my proposal, instead of a cosmology only from Whitehead, you can have Whitehead and the Guaranis. And perhaps only the Guaranis. Because this would be a decolonizing cosmology that resists the colonization movements that are still in place in our schools and in our government. We must go beyond the three forms of colonization that we have so far that Walter Mignolo comments. The first one, the Christian mission of the Portuguese and Spanish colonization of the 16th and the 17th centuries. The second one, the civilizatory Civilization there, brother. Mission of the British and the French Empire of the 18th and 19th centuries, and the new economic and military mission of the United States and the 20th century. We have to fight that. Still present and alive with us. From the Guarani's cosmology, we must accept the very irrationality of the logos of the Guaranis in our own irrationality. Because if we only consider that the Guarani cosmology or any other indigenous people cosmology is just a kind of an irrational knowledge, then we all must have the same fate. If we think that any philosophy done in Europe or by the white settlers, doesn't matter what theologian, doesn't matter what philosopher, if we think that this kind of philosophy, this kind of theology is better than the theologies of the Guaranis, we should all indeed perish in a land of endless evil. Because there is no more complexity in the Whitehead's cosmology than the Guarani's cosmology. And they're both insufficient. All of us have insufficient ways of addressing. But still the calling. The call for us today is our insistence on calling what in process theology is called the initial aim, the Nanderu, the great father, the first grandfather, and the without end, as well of the Holy Spirit, as the hardcore common sense notions, so we can gain a certain consciousness and mutual love to follow the wisdom of the Guarani's brothers and sisters. So we must go along with them and sing the Mombarahei Puku, the long chanting, so we can call forth the land without evil for all of us. We must start with the decolonization of our own mentalities, our own sources of thinking. Who do you use to think? I asked my students at the seminar, who is in your footnotes? Enough of white males, for Christ's sake. Bring some different, strange names for me. The ones that you cannot even say it properly. For there are forms of knowledge in the indigenous people that instead of being not enough, they will embarrass our rationality by showing how irrational we are in our powerful, safe ways of thinking and believing. So we must begin by listening to their stories and making their stories our own, so we can create a cosmopolitanism and a cosmology that embraces all the diversity and challenges the hospitality of our ethical demands. As Catherine Keller said, a decolonial and decolonizing cosmopolitanism will only be possible if voices of local histories, voices of local people that have been silenced by the imperial globalization are heard and brought back. As we think about the indigenous people, we must think about the nature, that sacred order of human community, if this thinking is to be a thinking together under the structure of an ethical responsibility. Concluding. Let us go against the anthropocentric and androcentric modernity that avoids histories, sensibilities, and subjectivities of indigenous people. As Andrea Smith and Audra Simpson said, two indigenous scholars, the placement of indigenous stories, the displacement of indigenous stories, hear this, is an imperial tool to take away both the intellectual and the political agency of the indigenous people. That's why we don't hear their story. In an ethics of mutual responsibility, we must use the creative transformation to make appear the conditions of the possibilities of life of the indigenous people. That is, the material conditions of the possibility of their flourishing as much as we can flourish. Another thing, we must learn with the indigenous people that our relation to nature is more than fundamental. And the movement of the earth must set the pace of our life and not the other way around. It is on us to learn better and deeper about the indigenous ways of living, knowing, celebrating, hoping, etc. The Guarani has a prophetic voice, one that talks about the stubbornness to believe that there is still a land without evil. There were 2 million, they are 46,000, but they still believe that there is a land without evil, and they still dance. And they still talk. And they still walk around. Hey, they haven't given up. Because they learn that they need to live through and by their own resistance. So we must learn about this resistance. The land without evil is a classless society. To wrestle with class is to wrestle with the land without evil. And while Marx must be criticized, he must be called upon to talk to us. Because he said that humankind must be in constant connection and process with nature, otherwise we will die. So let us stop saying and using the discourse, all the indigenous people are dying, because when we do that, we are only preparing the way for the erasure of the indigenous people in our world. No, they are not dying. They are alive. They are here. Their wisdom is still here with us. The very presence of the indigenous people in our research, in our prayers, in our daily life, in our ways of thinking about diversity is the only way that we can expand ourselves and start this process of unpeeling ourselves with layers and layers of colonization so that we can move along with them to see what does that mean. By taking the indigenous people seriously, we gain a deep sense of mutual belonging and promiscuous intellectuality. Mixing up people, things, and situations. I am yours. You are mine. The Guarani are ours. We are the Guaranis. We belong to the river. The river belongs to us. The planets belong to us. We belong to the planets. Being all intertwined, interrelated, interconnected in our DNA, in our flesh and incarnation, in the indwelling, a very good important word also for process theologists, in the indwelling of God in us, the breath of God in all of us. When we talk about the indwelling of God in us, the breath of God in us, then we have to expand and hear that our brother Eric Gardner in New York City was killed while he was saying, I cannot breathe. If Eric Gardner cannot breathe, we cannot breathe. If our indigenous people cannot breathe, we cannot breathe. We also lose our breath. We must learn to dance, to walk, and to talk before we all die. And here I end where I began. Not in abstract ideas, but in the hurting of my people. From there, from the midst of them, who once an elder took off all my clothes to teach me how to begin to start in solidarity, is where we need to move for justice and equality. But don't forget, we are up against mighty forces that are taking us down. Nonetheless, as the black people say, we are going to make a way out of no way. And as the Guarani people say, we will continue to fight and struggle for the land without evil. We will continue to use this creative transformation to construct a planet with planetary community, starting with our indigenous people there, and from there bringing anybody else to talk to us. So let's not forget that our work is, as from these two indigenous scholars said, our work is to offer our intellectual promiscuity, our sympathy, and our deep solidarity, as if we are saving each other. Can we do that? We can try. Thank you.
What do you say after that? That was amazing.
Still here or keep it here? Yeah.
So let's open it up for a little while before we hear from John. Comments, questions?
After such a brilliant presentation, nobody would like to. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was it?
Such a brilliant presentation, nobody can say anything.
Yeah.
What strikes me as really poignant is sitting here in the midst of all this today, when in California we have the possibility of Father Sarah being sainted. Is that correct? Is that what's going on? For a while, but it's moving along, and then having having some of the Southern California Native people speaking out against that, for what that would mean to them, to see someone who is part of a process of genocide being lifted to sainthood, and their voices. I don't know where their voice is, but so it just strikes me very poignant to have that on the one hand, and this, a forum where we're wanting to hear indigenous voices. Not just sitting here
Thank you.
with all that going on.
They're all related.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful. Made me want to get up and start dancing. Get everybody up and dancing, and walking to that land without evil.
Circles dances.
We could do that if you want to. We could do that. You want to dance?
Yeah.
No. Nobody wants to receive a PlayStation right now.
What is that?
It was a commercial inside the YouTube.
And just walk around. Those who want to do it. you.